Today's topic is...
breaking down the 7th Legion's design and lore.
The time for speeches is done.
Cal, you know I need you to speak for the rest of this video, right?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to WAYPN. I'm Cal.
And I'm Sunny.
Today we're going to be discussing the 7th Legion's pre- and post-heresy design, as well as redesign.
And within these segments, we'll be covering design breakdown, design analysis, art, design versus law, and final notes.
Let's get on with it. Design breakdown. Alright, Sunny, this is the standard armor of the...
No more lies. I know that this is the one before they met their Primarch. I know your tricks.
Okay, yeah, it's the one before they met their Primarch. But can you do your design analysis now?
Okay. So, obviously, this is the Mark II power armor.
Giving you access to the wiki was a mistake.
Yes, but anyhow, there's a large use of bright steel with yellow accents. There's some sort of bird of prey, wreath, and lightning motifs that's being used in the armor as well. The tabard reads Terra Gloria with a rising sun motif. So I'm thinking that with these bold and bright colors, it's a symbolism of hope as well, and a championing force. And they definitely seem quite approachable with the color choice.
I don't think that they seem approachable at all. I mean, take a look at that.
Yes, okay, design-wise, but look at the color. It's such a bright yellow, sunshine yellow, in fact.
Well, if you like yellow, let's see them with their Primarch. Alright, Sunny, here is the pre-heresy design of the 7th Legion.
And of course, we've moved on to the Mark III power armor. Yes. But it's a very lovely sunshine yellow that I mentioned before. In fact, he's all yellow. So there's also a red stripe that comes down the center of the mask. There's a number 37 on the left knee and a Maltese cross on the right, which looks a lot like how the Black Templars, they've got this as well. And of course, fists on either side of the pauldron. And I'm thinking that the symbolism shows it to be quite a knightly order, especially with the cross. And the strip down of the face with the crown, it also looks like another form of the cross, which ties in nicely with the Maltese cross on their knee. And the lightning and hawk give the idea of speed and freedom. And they, of course, have a very industrial look with all the rivets that they're sporting.
All right, Sunny, here are 3 other members of the 7th Legion, just so that people know that I'm not tricking you. What do you think of them?
Well, they look actually quite similar to one another, except for the last one, which is quite black, majority black. But let's talk about the one with the giant hawk in the center of his chest. The placement of the chapter symbol has changed. It's now centralized, and the left knee actually sports the Legion number, and there are 2 clashing swords on the right shin. So based on just some of these differences, I'm thinking that the sword symbol, that must say something about them being maybe a close combat squad.
Okay.
Or because it's something that you also see on knightly crests, like 2 clashing swords. So it could be symbolic to that as well.
And who are we covering next?
Let's do the one with the maces on the chest. So he's got a black chest plate this time with crossing maces, and I think that actually shows a sense of imposingness. There's a little bit more power to this look, and he looks very beat up as well as compared to the others. So I'm thinking he's a heavy hitter, a combat squad, but because he's using more powerful weapons, he looks a bit more imposing as well.
When you say a combat squad, what do you mean?
People maybe on the front lines doing more of the fighting.
Okay,
yeah.
So close combat, or do you just mean a general purpose dude?
I can't quite figure that one out just yet.
Okay.
Oh, now I know what I wanted to say. I think he's more of a specialist.
Okay, a specialist in what?
In the maces, using the maces or or heavy weapons and things like that.
Now for our final one.
Yes, and this one's very different compared to the other 3. He's moved up to the Mark IV armor, and he's majority black this time. And he's actually got a rook at the center of the chest. So that's a bit interesting. And we've got skulls on the wrists, but I think that's just part of this armor's mark feature. And he's got a black stripe that's coming down the center of the helmet. He's still sporting the Maltese cross on the right pauldron and a leather tabard. He also has a full flying hawk in front of a lightning motif on the right shin. As a design choice across the legions that we've analyzed so far, the dark colors and leathers seem to be used to depict either a leader or destroyer type. This chapter has a very vibrant and hopeful presence, so when there's a marine clad in more black, black, I think the symbolism becomes that much more apparent and stark in comparison.
All right, Sunny, there's something that I've been wanting to bring up, and I thought this would happen based off the images that I collected. There's something that I've noticed that you didn't talk about.
Oh yeah, what's that?
You have not made any cultural comments throughout all of this.
Right. Well, on that, I think this isn't really showing me much cultural significance anywhere, to be fair. I think this legion looks the most militaristic in that sense. It's just focused purely on symbolism, use of motifs and colors to depict what they think.
Well, because of that, I also arranged for 4 other dudes. Which one of them would you like to tackle first?
Let's do the one with the shield.
Go for it.
So, he's gone back to the Mark III armor, and he's got a red helmet with a white stripe. The company symbol is off the left arm now, and he's got a giant shield with dual axes on them. So, I'm noticing that there's a very consistent design across all the different variations, and a strong emphasis on the helmets changing every time, because the head will hold special significance, and it clearly communicates the different roles of each. So, because he's got a giant shield, I'm thinking he's a defender role.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Like, you know, SWAT, when you have like a long line at the front of shields.
I follow.
That's what I'm thinking.
Is there anything more that you can add to this one?
I don't think so.
All right, let's move on to the next one, which will be...
the yellow Terminator. Okay, so he's got a use of the leather straps, which we found out are called truges, or, you know, our New York hot dogs.
Yes, the Patrugis.
The Patrugis. And once again, to show that there's an increased level of importance, along with the black trims and the dual axe on a red shield at the center of the chest.
All right, that was pretty quick. Tell us what you think of this next one then.
Yes, so this time this Terminator is all black, and like I said before...
well, not quite all black,
yeah, majority black, and that is to show the imposing factor or the destructive factor of this particular Terminator. Taking a closer look, he's also got a different red crest on his, I believe that's the right shoulder. And I think this is to communicate that he must be a specialist Terminator of some sort.
Well, Sonny, there's something that I'm noting once again. You still haven't talked about anything cultural yet, so you've got one last one.
Yes, okay, let's move on to the last one.
All right, can you get anything cultural out of this one?
I don't know. It's not really looking to be anything cultural, because I guess I could say that this Terminator design itself could look a little bit on the Nordic side like we did with the Space Wolves, but I'm seeing that this is just the mark of the design of this Terminator, which is called a Tartarus pattern design, and I think that has actually no correlation to culture whatsoever. And I'm taking a look at more of him and his design, and there's nothing much there that's stating any cultural factors here. I would say that he's extremely beat up. The symbol on the chest doesn't feature the hawk anymore, and it's a wreath and lightning. So I have noticed quite a lot of use of wreaths. So maybe it might have something to do with Greek or maybe even Roman influences, maybe? But like it feels a lot like the Iron Warriors at this point, a very industrial, very plain
kind. You guys know what that means.
Oh no, what does it mean?
All right, continue your analysis.
Okay, so, the lightning seems to be the common factor for symbolism with this chapter, and the left knee has the rook symbol once again. And castles are structures to hide in the event of an attack, so I'd like to think it's some sort of a defensive role, especially with how beat up he looks.
All right, Sonny, I'd like us to move on to design analysis. All right, Sonny, I want to bring up something that you didn't at all, which I do think is a cultural factor, which is the medieval heraldry that you see in almost all of these guys. They all use a lot of heraldic designs.
They do. That is something that I noticed, but I didn't quite make that connection back to medieval culture. I did think that they were
medieval European culture in particular.
Yeah, because they just seemed like some other chapters, like for example, the Dark Angels, they also had a lot of knightly design incorporated in them.
But they were more high medieval rather than low medieval.
Oh, okay. So would you say this is more like low medieval?
Yes, I would, 100%.
Right, okay.
You also also notice with it that there's a lot of clashing arms in their designs.
There is.
Chest pieces, for example, the rook, things like that. There's a lot of things where it's obvious that it's a heraldic design and different heraldic designs, whereas the Dark Angels were mostly around wings and swords.
That's true.
Another thing that I noticed that you didn't was that their chapter symbol was on both of their shoulder pads.
Oh, they were,
You thought that the chapter symbol was actually the eagle. It's not. It's the fist.
So what is the hawk? What part? Is it like company? What is it?
The hawk is a reference to the emperor himself.
Oh.
See, the thunderbolts and the hawk, that's symbols of the emperor.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense now. I guess I got it wrong.
And another thing that I noticed far more than with a lot of the other legions is they're very symmetrical. Did you notice that?
They are quite symmetrical. I think like I said, there was a sense of consistency throughout this legion that I noticed more than with the others.
Yes, there was far more consistency with them compared to all of the others with all of their roles.
Yeah, do you think that's something to do with their Primarch, like they're very orderly? Something along those lines?
That would be telling before we got to the design versus lore part.
Okay.
I guess it's time to move on to art. All right, Sunny, as you know, there's only so much you can get off the templates. So, here is some art.
Okay, so I think I got it right when I said that I think this chapter represents hope a lot because the center person has a rising sun or a halo right behind him, right? And there's cherubs flying in the sky and people are carrying their banners even though they're all dirty and grimy. They're going in with pride and vigor and a sense of solitude. So it's showing that determination. And you've got these people at the front. I'm not too sure what they're called. The ones in the red robes, they're sort of like following them into battle. And I think that really communicates that this chapter is a hopeful chapter.
I'm not 100% sure that I would agree with that.
Okay,
but we'll move on to the next piece.
Before we move on, I'd like to rephrase what I said. I don't think they're a hopeful chapter, but a chapter that brings about hope.
Oh, okay. All right. No. That makes more sense. All right, let's move on now. What do you think of this piece of art?
Well, it's super bright and very colorful for one. It's very different from the usual pieces of artwork that we see with Warhammer. It's not grim dark at all. And like I said, again, it's showing a lot of hope because you can take a look at the thing in the background, a giant mountain with the light coming up from it to show the pinnacle, right? And you've got raptors coming from the sky and they're blue, so I'm pretty sure they're the Ultramarines, and they're coming in to give him backup, the Center Marine, who is obviously from the 7th Legion because he's all yellow. And I'm taking a look to see like if there's any cultural indications on him because sometimes the artwork will show a little bit more cultural identifiers. And the closest thing I can see is there's this time a wreath for the center marking the company symbol, and sorry, not the company symbol, but the chapter symbol, and you've got the fist holding on to the wreath, and there's a cross where his neck plate is, and of course at the tabard, at the red trims, there seems to be a bit of that Grecian pattern there, so maybe they have a little bit of Greek culture in them. But other than that, he's putting his hand out, sort of like onward, man. That is the vibe that I get from this one.
Okay, yeah, cool. All right, yeah, no, I agree completely. And our final bit of artwork for the 7th Legion.
This time you can see a lot more of that grim dark vibe coming through because you've got a lot of combat happening, a lot of blood everywhere, a lot of use of the color red. And you can see ships being destroyed in the background. There's a giant hole in the spaceship that the 7th Legion are coming through, and they're looking to defeat another 2 Space Marines up front. And when I take a closer look, there's a lot of hazard stripes on these guys. So they must be Iron Warriors. So is this what you meant earlier on when you had that little reaction when I compared them?
There might be a chance.
Yeah, so maybe they're the enemies in this one, and the 7th Legion guys are looking to defeat them.
Yeah, there is a chance. All right, let's move on to
Design versus lore.
All right, there's one thing that I was really surprised that you didn't talk about during this entire thing, which was you were noting the color yellow over and over again. But in our in-depth color psychology analysis, we talked about how yellow has associations with dominance, and you never brought that up once.
Right. Yeah, because I guess the most common association would be like joy and hope and, more positive aspects of these guys rather than dominance.
Well, see, that's why I was surprised, because that's what I thought your mind would have gone back to because of how they are.
I think I also didn't quite draw that conclusion because in the early pre-heresy one, the yellow is not like a very striking yellow. It's a very sunshine, happy yellow, and that's why I thought that as well.
But you were right about some of the other things. For example, all of those markings, those markings were actually about the various campaigns these people had been in.
Oh, all right.
So when they had, for example, the eagle or the thunderbolts, right, that referenced their campaigns on Terra.
Right. Okay, so that explains a lot with the banner of Terra Gloria when we talked about that at the front. Yeah, okay, that actually makes a lot of sense because that's not something that I've seen in some of the other legions where like the symbolism changes according to the campaigns.
Well, they do have some of it, but it's not nearly as prominent as it is with the Imperial Fists.
Right, okay.
As for culture, they're a bit of a mixed bag. So where their Primarch comes from, it's almost Russian coded. So it's a very cold area, and he was raised by his grandfather rather than a father figure.
Okay.
But as for their cultural heritage for their legion, it's much closer to that of the German Holy Roman Empire.
Oh, okay. Is there a difference? Like, wouldn't there just be a Holy Roman Empire?
Okay, so the Holy Roman Empire is obviously Italian, right?
Oh, yep.
But the Holy Roman Empire, it rose and fell multiple times throughout history. But you can see with the motifs that they use, it's particularly Germanic.
Ah, okay. That's making a lot of sense now because I couldn't quite make the correlation. Like, are they Roman/Greek or are they medieval, like you mentioned before? So this is actually making a lot more sense now.
The other problem with identifying them is so many of the other legions take on those symbols of those elements. Either the Roman part or the Germanic part. They've got all of these various symbols of the legionaries.
Yes, so that is also why I couldn't quite pin down which culture they were from because there's a lot of these references used in other legions as well.
Okay, so taking away from the real world cultures, what do you think their culture is about?
They seem to be a very systematic and orderly chapter. Definitely a chapter that is looking to take initiative and dominate others as well.
Okay, on that note, remember how we were talking about the Iron Warriors?
Yes.
They are the opposite of the Iron Warriors in that they are the Fortification Legion rather than the Siege Legion.
That makes a lot of sense with the Rook now because the
Well, that was just another one of the campaigns,
okay.
The whole thing is they're all about, fortifying an area. That's what they did during the heresy. They fortified Terra. They were the defenders of Terra.
Well, that makes a lot of sense with how much of the defensive roles that we picked up on with their design.
And finally, two other things. You know how you were noting that they changed colour to become black? That is their denotion of a veteran.
Oh, okay, all right.
And remember when you were denoting that Maltese cross?
Yes.
Guess which legion the Black Templar are born from?
Imperial Fists?
Yes.
What? Seriously?
Yeah.
Oh my god. Well, it actually also makes sense in a different symbolic representation of black also represents the end of something. So it's like veterans are like the highest level in terms of experience, right? So like black can represent that as well.
All right. Did you pick up on this at all? They have a strong connection with pain.
I guess the guys with the beat up armor might be the one, no?
Okay, no, it's a big part of their culture. They have a thing called the pain glove. And they've got this saying, pain is the wine of communion with heroes. I think that's right.
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't know.
But anyway, that's a big part of their culture. They put on this glove and it's... Remember when I was talking about that grim stupid or grim derp thing?
Yep.
Okay, well, it's got 5 settings. The first is educational.
Oh, Okay.
And then, like, they've got meditative. I get the idea of the meditative one, and, like, the final one is torture, but, like, it's a whole cultural thing ingrained with them. And I think if I didn't bring it up, it would have really betrayed them. But I don't think we see that anywhere in their design. So I think they fail on that regard.
Yeah, that is true. You don't really see much of that pain element come through at all.
I think we've covered everything that I can think of. So shall we move on to final notes? Is there anything you think that we missed with them thus far?
Well, I think the only analysis that I will possibly change after hearing the lore is that, the yellow actually symbolizes the color of the sun/gold, which also symbolizes the emperor, like you said, because that's something that they're about.
Oh, actually, there is something that I'll show you right now. Okay, here's a picture of Rogel Dawn. That's their Primarch. Notice something? Anything?
Yeah, very gold. Golden boy.
So, yeah, I think you might be spot on, but maybe not of the Emperor, but rather of Rogel Dawn.
Yeah, I think that's a bit more fitting as well.
Anything else that you can think of?
No, I think, like we mentioned before, they're very consistent with their design, and I quite like that. The only thing I would say is that the helmet has different variations, which I would have liked to learn a little bit more about what the different colors would have meant with the different stripings. But other than that, I think they did a pretty good job.
Well, guys, maybe you can tell her in the comments. And in the meantime, we can move on to Post-Heresy. Like usual, Sunny, I'm going to show you the Firstborn and then the Primaris. So, tell us what you think of this guy.
Well, now they've moved on to the Mark 7 one, and I have to say he's looking pretty plain. In the previous designs, they showed that there is some level of cultural influences in it, but now there is none of the sort. We have the red Aquila now at the center of the chest, and the pauldrons no longer have an Imperial Fist logo on either side, only one side, and the other side has the tactical marking, and then the right shin has a skull on it. And there's nothing much to say here about exactly what he does, if he's a specialist or whatever, but the weapon suggests that he's probably just a standard dude, because he's got the bolt gun.
I will note one thing with him. Notice on his power pack that it's slightly modified. It's got that fortification on the back of it at the top. Do you see that?
Yeah, nah, I just didn't realize that was something different. I just thought, yeah.
I'm not sure what it is, but I did notice it.
Okay, yeah, I guess it does look like the top of the rook there.
Next up, we have the Primaris Marine.
And he doesn't look any different from the one that we actually seen before. The power pack would be the only thing that's different, but that's just how the Primaris armor looks. It's more streamlined, and it just doesn't have much flavor to it.
Well, talking about not having much flavor to it, both of these guys didn't really seem to get anything out of you.
No.
So I'm going to show you 3 more guys and tell us what you think about them.
Okay.
All right, which one of these 3 would you like to start with?
Let's do the Space Marine with the shield.
Okay, all right, go for it.
So yeah, this is very interesting because I can clearly tell that he is wearing the Primaris armor, but he's got that shield that actually looks quite like the Maltese cross, but it's not exactly the same. I think there is a different cross that looks like this. I'll look it up and put it up right now. And the Imperial Fist symbol is right up front. And I've never actually seen a Space Marine carry such a small shield before.
Okay,
yeah.
So usually I'd wait for the design versus lore part, but this is a thing called a storm shield. It's got a force field inbuilt into it.
Oh, yeah,
that's why it's so small, because essentially that's what its job is. And so this is Terminator equipment on a regular Space Marine.
Oh, that's very interesting. Okay, I didn't expect that. Yeah, and he's got another weapon on his hand. I just thought that, because it did look quite similar to the kind that the chaplains hold, and I thought maybe that's like a specific variation for the Imperial Fist, but maybe it's something else.
It's Terminator equipment.
It's a Terminator equipment. Yeah, okay, that's very interesting. But he is not a Terminator, right?
No, he's not.
So it's quite interesting why he's using a Terminator equipment, but maybe we can move on to the next guy.
Sure. Speaking of Terminators...
Yeah, this one looks pretty much the same as the previous guy, especially the shield. I would say the weapon looks different. It's like a power hammer. And the center Aquila, quote unquote, is now different once again. It's an Imperial Fist grabbing 2 crossed pulsing thunderbolts, and this just shows their connection back to Terra and the connection to the Emperor. And I think it's pretty consistent across all of their designs. I would say previously that it did seem a little odd that they kept changing their center symbols, but there's a reason for that, and you've explained that to me. So other than that, I think they look pretty cool.
And here's our final one, which is kind of close to artwork, but I wanted to include something else.
Yeah, so with this Primaris Marine, there are about a few things that I can see that are a little bit different. Like, you've got the Imperial Fist at his forehead as well. And you've got the Imperial Fist on his knee pad, which I don't think we've seen that much. And he's got some sort of charm around his pauldron. And he's also got some skulls and bones tied to the other side of the pauldron as well. So that is interesting, and I'm curious to see what the reasoning is behind that.
It sounds like you've gotten all you can out of these guys, so it sounds like it's time for Design Analysis.
Well, it seems that once they move closer to the post-heresy design, they just lose a lot of character, and they didn't have much to begin with anyway. And once they reach the stage, they just seem to be following a standardized design, I guess to follow the Codex Astartes, and they seem to also sport the purity seals, which they didn't do before. And I guess with that, they do have a little bit of trinkets here and there that might show some form of cultural significance with the last Primaris design that we saw with the artwork. But other than that, they just seem really plain.
Well, Imperial Fist players, you've got to love that analysis. Short, honest, brutal. Moving on to art. So, Sunny, what do you think of this first piece of artwork?
Well, it's very evocative with all the different textures that you can see going on here. It's quite brutal, in fact, because of all the splattering that's being used in here. And take a look at the banner of the Imperial Fist. It's completely tattered. You can see how hard these guys are trying to fortify or defend and fight back the enemy, which from the bottom corner seems like it could be an Iron Warrior.
It just may be. They might have a grudge against them.
Yeah, and this really shows a lot of that fighting spirit.
All right, up next, something fairly different. Tell us what you think.
Yeah, so it's a portrait of a Marine, and he looks pretty clean other than a few scratches and dings here and there. But you can see that it seems like he's received some of his honors. You've got the crest, you've got that very nice red rope with a medallion over into the corner, and some purity seals there. So this really showcases that sort of orderly part of this chapter.
You know, there's a YouTuber who often uses this, which is quite ironic because to me, he looks quite stoic, and this this YouTuber is known for being quite excitable.
So a little bit of a juxtaposition there.
Yeah, just a tiny bit.
Yeah.
And now for our final piece of art.
I would say they look the most like Dark Angels here because of that giant shield with the skeleton on it. It's something that I see the Dark Angels sport a lot, but mostly it's because it really showcases the knightly side of these guys. Because take a look at that helmet. It's pretty much a knight's helmet.
It looks quite sort of cybernetic to me with the way that it's got the eyes. It almost looks like, I've forgotten the name of the franchise. Oh, right, Battlestar Galactica, the Cylons. Here's a picture of one.
Yeah, I guess I can see a little bit, especially in the eye, but he has a completely different helmet design compared to the Primaris behind him. And if you take a look at the gate with the mouthpieces, it looks just like a knight's helmet to me.
Yeah, I guess the ear thing sort of throws me with that.
Yeah,
but yeah,
I
I
guess
can
so.
see what you're saying.
But he also's got that crest on his chest, which is like medieval heraldry, like we've talked about before. The way he raises his sword, the way he's got that cream tabard coming down the center, or a tunic if you'd like to call it that. And it just shows that he's coming in with his other Marines with him, surveying the situation because it seems like a pretty heated battle going on in the front.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that's all we can say about these guys, so let's move on to
Design versus Law. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about is the heresy was terrible for the Imperial Fists.
Oh, okay, so what's changed for them?
Well, a lot has changed. They lost their Primarch, like a lot of other people did, right? But the question of whether he has survived or not is a lot more up in the air than some of the others. So they recovered his hand, right? And
so fitting because of the fist.
Yes,
only the hand is
we
found.
know that Games Workshop is always on the nose. We get it. One of the things that really didn't come up in their design at all, except for that one artwork, is that they really got into scrimshoring. So that means the marking of bones or wood items usually, but bones in their case, usually finger bones and skulls.
So, okay, finger bones because it ties back to like the fist. Is that it?
Yeah.
Skulls?
Well, it's all about like writing in markings of people's deeds and this sort of thing, right? And honoring those people, all of that sort of thing.
That does make sense because they're just sort of like bringing their honored brother along with them into battle, even though they're dead. That's cool. I do feel after listening to the design versus lore sections that there are these little cultural nuances that have been completely ignored as part of their design, like the pain glove, the culture of, being tied together by pain, or even the scrimshoring like you just mentioned before. So other than that one artwork where you show me the Primaris with the bones tied to his side of his hip, I would have to give them a fail on that part.
There's other bits which is quite ironic. So Rogel Dawn opposed the Codex Astartes.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Him of all people. Like, he seems like someone who's very orderly and systematic.
But see, the reason he did is essentially he thought the legions were the only hope of keeping the Imperium together. And if you take a look at some of our other pieces, you would see that we very much agree with him on that.
Oh, yeah,
Even if he is a bit of a stick in the mud.
Yeah.
But you notice how compliant they are compared to the other chapters we've seen. Like, they have almost no cultural influence.
Yeah, it's true.
And there is one reason that might be happening. They've been destroyed to a man, not just once, but twice.
Oh, really?
Yep, and they got their gene seed from the vaults and from other chapters, and essentially they restarted the chapter again.
Okay.
And so I think because of that, a lot of their culture got lost with that.
Yeah, it does make sense. Cal, I think it's time for
Final notes.
Alright, Cal, after hearing all these analysis, I think I will take back where I said that they fail on the part of the cultural part, where it gets removed entirely with the post-heresy design because their chapter gets rebuilt entirely. So it would match the current era of the time where everyone was standardizing. But I do think that certain cultural nuances, like the pain glove part, could have been more apparent in the pre-heresy portion.
Yeah, for sure. I also think that it would be nice if we saw more elements of that scrimshoring within the
post-heresy design?
Yeah,
I agree with that as well.
Is there anything else that you think that you can add to this?
Nah, I don't think so.
Alright, I guess it's time to move on to Redesign. So the first thing that I'd like to talk about with them is their color scheme. And as we've talked about with color psychology, this color scheme doesn't really fit them, does it?
I don't really think so, no.
Well, yellow is meant to be a positive color, a color of energy.
Yes.
Though not popular in research, from our research when we did our color psychology video, we figured that yellow has a connection with dominance.
I would say that when it comes to sort of remembering a brand, so the brand in this case being Imperial Fists, you really can't mistake them with that bright color of that yellow. So I would say the dominance comes from that aspect of how striking it is.
Yeah, I agree. However, I want to talk about two of their successes, their most popular successes, the Black Templar and the Crimson Fists.
Oh, okay.
And I think that they have a much better understanding of their color psychology. So you know the Black Templar, they're very popular. However, the big thing is they're black and white. And this is the mentality that I believe that the Imperial Fists have. They have very black and white thinking. They don't think in terms of grey. They think, is it right or is it wrong?
Yeah, and you just do what needs to be done in either path.
However, I don't think that they should take the chains from the Black Templar because that was culturally specific to Sigismund and all of that history, and I think it would take away from both chapters if they both had that one element.
Because the successors are just meant to be an inspiration from the original. They're not meant to be direct copies.
Yeah, they've got their own cultures. So moving on, the Crimson Fists, they have a blue and red color scheme, and we've talked about how that's very complementary. But not only that, why do they have that red? Because that red is the sign of their symbol, the fist, right?
Yep, that's right.
Not only that, but also one of their fists is painted crimson, and that has that connection to the pain glove and all of this sort of thing.
I immediately made that connection. When you have like crimson fist, I'm like, okay, red feels painful because like blood, and it's on your fist, so it ties back to that sense of pain. And I thought that really communicated it. But I will say, I feel the blue and the red combination. When I first saw the Crimson Fist, I mistook them for some part of the Ultramarines.
Yeah, I
And
understand.
I think perhaps yellow and red instead to bring back a nod back to the Imperial Fist.
Well, that's what I wanted to talk about. So I really like the idea of a black and white color scheme for how they are. However, yellow is just such a part of this particular...
It's very iconic.
Yes, very iconic. That's a better way of saying it. So I think for a redesign, we'd have to keep the yellow, but not because it fits with them at all, but just because it's so iconic, as you said.
Yeah, it's just part of their identity, and you just want sometimes think about what is the most identifiable about the brand.
Yeah. So I think you got to keep that, but color psychology wise, it does
didn't
not
quite
fit
make
as
sense.
and also there's one part that we haven't talked at all about the yellow color psychology, which is that it's connected with cowardice, and that's not who these people are. They're more just stubborn so-and-sos than cowards.
And I would say like the black would bring about that stubbornness a lot more. Hey?
Oh yeah, well, thinking about the color psychology of it, I do think that they should incorporate black and white. However, not in the elements that they have currently. So I think, for example, their scout company should be all white.
Oh, okay.
Additionally, where Dawn's hand is missing, I think that should be colored black for something that is the end, for something that is
lost.
missing. Yes. But I do think that their other hand should be coloured red.
Yeah, for the pain.
Yes, and to sort of show that. But we've just been talking about the colour psychology elements. Let's go to the favourite person we love to steal from, Lev Koy. You know, looking at these designs, it's picking up on one of the things that I was thinking about, which is their armor should be more fortified.
Yeah.
But there is something that I really dislike, which is all of this black trim looks too ostentatious. And the other thing is, I paint miniatures, and I know how hard it is to have yellow against black.
And I agree with you from a practical standpoint, but from a design standpoint, I have to completely disagree, because that black, especially with such a thick edging, shows that reinforcement. It gives that sort of reinforcement.
I understand what you're saying, but I just look at it and it's like, all right, first off, the yellow doesn't fit anyway, so why must we have yellow against the black?
Yeah, and I'm thinking about the yellow, and I'm thinking about how we talk about fortifying, and I know a lot of people will disagree or not like this idea, but why not a gray, like a cement gray?
Well, I was thinking about that before, and the reason why I didn't think that they should have a grey, even like a warm grey, like a cement grey, or like a cold grey, like a slate grey, is they don't have grey thinking. They have black and white thinking.
Yeah, but it's like, how do you bring about that sort of symbolism? And...
Yeah, I know. And I do think you're right in one way. Like, if we're talking about what they do, grey fits them a lot better.
Yeah.
But what I don't actually think fits them is some of the stuff that Lev Koy's done here, which has made them very ostentatious.
Yes, I do. Okay, I can understand why you say that, but I think the thing that why we always go back to Lev Koy is that he takes all these cultural adaptations, he takes all the philosophies of a chapter and just goes ham with it and makes it more apparent.
And I understand that, but see, with the Imperial Fists, that's not who they are. They're more about form over function.
Yeah.
Sorry,
function over form.
Yes.
And I think there's lots of things that he could still keep, like these castle-like and the brick-like designs that he's gone for. You can make a lot
with the power packs here.
Yeah, you can do that with the trimming, but you don't have to go too over the top.
Well, I mean, like, you take a look at the exhaust ports and, like, they're made of fists or, knightly things. And, like, I just look at that and I'm like, no, that's way too much. And they wouldn't do that. See, what they want is they want standardized equipment, because something breaks down and they just replace it. They just bang.
Yeah. They think more about practical than,
Yes.
flourishes. But yeah, this obvious Obviously, it's a stylistic choice.
Yeah, no.
But when we think about it from a redesign point of view, in a practical sense, it doesn't quite work out. And I do agree.
Now, I know this is going to go against everything that I just said, but I like the helmet designs because the helmets have been shown to be in lore a much more personal thing. So the thing is that some of the times Primaris Marines use older Marines' helmets as sort of a tribute to them and all of this other sort of thing. So helmets have a special connection. And as we said, when it comes to design, you know, the head has special significance.
Yes, and I think the ones that I like the most, going back to the point where you say it's not too ostentatious, is the one on the top right and the bottom left, because those really show the fortification. It really shows that sort of bulky, tank-like, aspect of what we would like to bring about with the Imperial Fist.
Yeah.
Compared to the other two on the diagonal, they're a little bit more on the ostentatious side, more gold, more eagle, and I think the other two really fit
I
their
really do
theme.
like the central one, though. I
Yeah,
think
central
that
one's good too.
one of my favorites. So I think we've gone over pretty much all we can with their redesign. So taking a look at it, one of the ideas we had was black and white. The other idea you had was grey. But definitely their fists should have something different with them, right?
Definitely.
Perhaps black for the missing fist, perhaps red to represent the pain glove. But there was one thing that I was thinking about this whole time, which is they 100% must have their tactical and chapter markings on their hands.
Oh, yeah, just to bring back everything, go back to the hands.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. But I feel like they're almost the inverse of the Space Wolves in one way.
Oh, yeah, and what's that?
When we take a look at their successor chapters, they're just filled with such flavour and they've got such a connection to them. And they're so interesting. And I feel like this is what a successor chapter should look like.
Definitely.
Right? And I feel like when I take a look at the Imperial Fist successor chapters, I'm like, oh, damn, that's interesting. Every single time, I'm like, oh, that's cool. I like that.
All right, Cal. If I let you talk about successor chapters any further, we'll be here all day.
Okay, Sonny.
Well, you gotta say the words for the people.
All right. Keep those brushes wet. Bye-bye. Sonny, you were saying that the Imperial Fists have no flavour.
Yeah, I don't think they've got much flavour at all.
Well, Warhammer World is opening a new ice cream bar based around the Imperial Fists.
Oh my gosh, what's the flavour?
Rice, pasta, and tofu.
Oh, come on.
Oh boy.